starting a hiking and adventure YouTube channel during a global pandemic and a national lockdown? Bad idea. Kia ora everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel of hiking and photography adventures in Aotearoa. We're in a week 2 of lockdown, and so far the only real adventures I'm getting to go on is crossing the road to the supermarket to buy my groceries. It's not really what you want to watch on this channel. So how am I supposed to share with you my hiking and photography adventures when I can't even leave my own property? I've come up with a solution. See, the problem for someone like me who wants to go on epic adventures is that all of a sudden my world's got a lot smaller. So, I had an idea. What if I got smaller? Like, a lot smaller. This is Mia. Mia's a little Lego man. Well, Lego woman. Lego girl. Anyway, and for Mia, this backyard is like a national park. There are landscapes everywhere. It's all just a matter of changing your perspective, and I'm going to show you how to do that. One of the more challenging aspects of miniature landscape photography is exactly the same as regular photography, and that is finding a good composition. Now, this is complicated somewhat in this case because as we walk around looking for compositions that are going to work for Mia's world, our perspective is kind of like that of a drone or a helicopter looking straight down on the world, and it can be kind of hard to visualize what things look like down at the subject level. That's where it's really important to lower your perspective and have a look at things from Mia's perspective, as it were, down low. Now, that might mean crawling around in ditches, lying on the ground, getting on your stomach. So I've got this wooden plank across here that's all overgrown with trees and stuff across this ditch, and I've put Mia on the edge of this, overlooking the gorge, as it were, down into the chasm, and I've put my camera here nice and low, looking up at Mia. Now, as you can see, you may have noticed I've underslung my camera on the tripod. So one of the things that can really assist you is if you've got a tripod where you can reverse the center column. This will allow you to get nice and low on your perspective, which is essential for selling the idea that you're down in Mia's world looking at things the way Mia sees them. So I'm using some of these trees and things in the foreground as a bit of foreground interest that's going to lead me up to meet the leading line of the edge of the bridge that takes me through to Mia. Now, the final ingredient in all of this is light, and when I recce this spot, we get little bits of sunlight on the bridge coming through the trees. Unfortunately, it's cloudy right now, so just like happens with regular photography, I'm waiting on the light. Hey, so it's the next day, as you can probably tell by my change in attire and my beautiful shaved face, and I'm back. I did take a photo yesterday, but I wasn't really happy with it. So I've come back, I've slightly adjusted my composition, and I'm once again waiting for the light. Talk amongst yourselves. Have a coffee. Lid's still on. Cheers. Lockdown memes. Okay, the light's just perfect now, so I'm just going to quickly get this shot and then we can talk about it. Okay. Whew. That was exciting. So just in terms of technical settings, so I haven't really covered that off yet. I'm at f8, I'm at 10 mils, and I'm bracketing my exposures. You might be aware of a photography technique known as miniature or tilt shift photography. It's quite popular online, and basically what it does is it involves making photographs of landscapes or cityscapes or familiar locations look like they're photographs of tiny little miniatures. That traditionally is done with a special type of lens called a tilt shift lens, which creates an incredibly narrow depth of field, but it can also be done to a degree in post-processing in Photoshop by blurring the area immediately in front of and behind your subject. So in order to create the effect of the little landscape photos, we effectively have to do the exact opposite of the technique that's used to create fake miniature imagery. So what I need to do is take my shallow depth of field miniature photography and give it a very large depth of field. Now there's no way to do that with the camera. The camera simply cannot produce that wide a depth of field. You may have noticed as I took a whole lot of photos there and I was adjusting the camera each time. What I was in fact doing is taking photos with multiple points of focus. I can then focus stack those in Photoshop and create an image with a wide depth of field, and that's what I'm going to show you next. Hi there, so I'm in my makeshift sort of studio while I'm on lockdown. So I've loaded all of the images into Lightroom. I've merged my brackets into HDR files, and I'm just going to quickly go through my edit and then show you how I focus stack them in Photoshop to create the final image. So I've got my 9 images here. As you can see, each of them has a different point of focus, and eventually we're going to merge them all together. Okay, so I will start with just the first image, and I'm going to do some rough development for that. Now I've had a play already, and I actually have a preset. One of the images you might have seen on my website, Kai My Stream. I quite like the look for that with the really rich dark green tones and a bit of split toning. I'm not going to go in detail into the edit. There's some much better channels on YouTube for learning about how to do post-processing. So I would recommend finding some more popular, more professional channels. So I'm just going to very quickly make a few adjustments and then we'll do the focus stacking in Photoshop. Okay, so I think I want it to be slightly brighter. So that's good there. We'll set a point for the whites and the blacks. And then just reduce the clarity there, but I will give it a little bit of texture. And I just want to bring back the saturation just a little bit. Now, one of the techniques that's used to create the artificial miniature photography that I talked about is saturation. increasing the saturation of the image. And one of the reasons you do that is because miniatures and toys and what have you tend to be very, very brightly coloured versus the real world. So to an extent we can do our reverse of that to create a realistic landscape with a model by desaturating a little bit. So I don't want Mia's red hair and blue overalls that she's got there to be too intense in the frame, or it will kind of give away the fact that she's a little model. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm just going to do my regular sharpening. In terms of sharpening and what have you, you just kind of learn a level that works for your camera, and I pretty much use the same kind of sharpening just about every time. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now the only thing that I've got an issue with here is in this top right corner, it feels like it's a little bit bright and it's a bit distracting. So I'm just going to put a graduated filter up in the top right corner there, and that will just darken that down a little and avoid that distraction. So that's pretty good. So I don't want to do too much editing. So now I'll just select all of my 9 images. I go sync, and then just make sure that I've selected everything, including the local adjustments for that gradient, synchronize those. That'll put the same development settings across every image. There we are, and then it's simply a case of going edit and open as layers in Photoshop. And then what it will do is it will load each of those images in a stack as separate layers in Photoshop. And from there I'll be able to selectively mask each layer and create a focus stack. So this will take a little bit of time, so just talk amongst yourselves while we wait for this. Okay, so I've got my 9 layers here stacked in Photoshop, one after the other. And then the first step is that I need to align these layers. So when you take photographs that are the same composition with slightly different focus, the framing adjusts very, very slightly as you change focus. It's a phenomenon called focus breathing. Now the lens I used, Panasonic's new Leica 10-25 1.7, is allegedly incredibly good in terms of not having focus breathing. So in theory, I shouldn't need to do any sort of auto alignment, but it only takes a moment, so we'll just quickly do that. And we'll just line them up, all the layers, so that as we merge different parts of the image for different layers, they'll all line up with each other. So we'll quickly do that. So that's all done. And then it's very simply a case of going over here, going edit blend layers, and then we want to stack layers. And then we just hit OK. And then what it's basically doing, it's on each image, it's looking for the parts of the image that are sharp, and it will only select the parts of each layer that are sharp, and then it makes the rest of that layer invisible. And then it does that for each layer, so they'll stack up on front of each other. And in theory, all you get across the image is just the in focus elements, and it creates a whole image where the whole image is in focus. So here we have our blended image. I like to just go in, zoom right in, and just move around the image and just check how the focus is. Sometimes you do need to correct a few things. I've found particularly on the little figurine of Mia there, because there's not much detail, she's a little plastic figurine, sometimes it doesn't recognize which layer is the sharp layer. So sometimes I have to manually correct that, but for this one it seems to be pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So we'll just jump back out, and then we've got all layers still selected, and then we just need to go to edit and layer. See, I told you I'm not an expert. Just go to layer and go merge visible, and then that will combine all of those layers into a single image again. And then if we close out of Photoshop, save the changes, and then it will send those changes back into Lightroom and give us a Lightroom file that is the new merged image. Okay, so we're back in Lightroom. Here's the finished image. And you can see there's a little bit of a white border around the edge of the image. So that's from the auto alignment. As the images didn't quite match up. So I'm just gonna crop the image slightly. I'm also want to adjust it just a little bit, just to put Mia right on that thirds line there, the top left. There we go. So I'm pretty happy with that now. Now, the only issue I find now is just down in this bottom left corner here. There's this little orange area that I find a bit distracting. It really sticks out because it's contrasting with the green around it. So I'm just going to do a little local selection and drop the exposure and really drop the saturation. And that hopefully will just make that little orange patch there just not quite so bold. Okay, that's pretty good there. And there we are. So that is the finished product. So there you have it. I hope you'll be inspired by my video to find a little figurine of your own like Mia and head out into your own backyard and look for some little landscapes of your own to explore. Thank you so much for watching my video. I really appreciate it. And Mia and I are now going to head off and go looking for some more landscapes to explore. I hope very, very soon we're all released back into the wild and I can take you on some real adventures. Until then, stay safe and be kind. See you soon. I wanna go there someday.